Let's hop in to today's video. I want to talk about flash accessories that you could use as a wedding photographer. So you want to get into using flash. If you're a photographer looking to expand their abilities, or you're a working professional that is just going into flash photography from natural light, I think I might be of some help. I'm Tim, I'm a wedding photographer based out of Eastern Ontario, and today I want to talk about flash. Today I'm going to be focusing on flash photography specifically for events like weddings, which if you can work a wedding, there's many other events that you can do outside of that, like corporate work. So let's look at some of the accessories you can get. Now, when you first go online, and you start going down the rabbit hole of the internet, you're going to be seeing lots of different products that you can find and use. And some products are better than others. So let's have a look. Now, if you're just getting into this and you want to practice using bounce flash, so working events, quite often you have the flash mounted on top of your camera. Like this, you can have your flash attached to the top of your camera. Now today, for purposes of this video, I have my 5D Mark III, my trusty camera. This is the third camera that I bring with me on a wedding day. However, I'm starting to run out of EF glass that I'm bringing on wedding day, so I might actually have to upgrade my third body. But this is my fail-safe body. Working a wedding, I heard someone say one time, and it has really resonated and stuck with me, is that if you have two of something, it means you only really have one. So I always go to a wedding with two cameras, but if one fails, I'm now left with one camera. Now, that's not the end of the day, but it does make the efficiency much different. So having a third camera, if one camera fails, I still have two cameras on me. However, I'm starting to run out of EF glass here, so I can make it work. Anyway, so let's get back on topic. For flash, when you're working events, quite often you'll find yourself having your flash mounted to the top of your camera. Now, quite often, unless you're going for a certain look like this, where the flash is directly pointed at someone to create a more retro vibe, I myself don't do this, but if you're doing this, you're gonna have to be running on a very low power setting. And I personally don't use direct flash. But what I do use is bounce flash. So when the camera's on top of the body, you have your subject in front of you, I'll either have the flash pointed at the ceiling or at the wall so the flash isn't directly bouncing off and burning the people's skin. Now, like burning the people's skin, it burns you will be clipping the highlights in their skin if not exposed properly for direct flash. So in order to mitigate that risk and to create more fill light and even out the light coming from the flash, what you can use is bounce flash. So if I'm shooting in portrait mode, I'll have the camera flash facing upwards like this. Or if you're shooting landscape, you can have the flash pointed like this. And then you can use walls to bounce off the walls, as so, or bounce behind you. So let's talk about some of the accessories you can use to help direct the flash. If you want to keep it nice and simple and cheap, and just to start experimenting, what you can use is a flash card. Now, flashes do come with bounce cards, if I can get it out. This little white card here to help direct the flash outwards like this. I find, it's not very big, right? So you can pick up these little foam pieces and trim them to size from the dollar store, Dollar Tree, wherever you might be at. I use Dollarama. And you can use a couple of hair elastics and put it around the flash like that. So if you want to direct the flash upwards towards the ceiling, but you want to reduce how much flash is coming towards the person, you can use this. So it's mounted on the front of your camera like that. Or if you're shooting in portrait mode, you can just twist it around with a couple of hair elastics, and we can do that. This works in good combination with flash gels, so we'll get into that as well. Now, this is just now lives in my cupboard behind me, but I have it for example, and that's what I used to use. Cheap, effective. Then we get into these Rogue modifiers. Now, I've had this for a very long time. It's Velcro. You have a nice big bounce area to stick on top of the flash. You can turn it into a mini softbox. Just like that. A big bounce card. And then you can turn it into like a little softbox. Like this. This works okay with gels. It's a bit tight. But you can shove the gels in the sides here. I've loved these Rogue flash benders for quite some time. However, if you look for them online, I believe the company is going out of business because they have very minimal products for sale, which is kind of a shame because they have been trumped by another company. So I actually still use these gels on my secondary flashes, and these are my fill flashes to bringing up the shadows in the background. So on a wedding, I have 2 cameras with me. If I'm inside, I'll have a flash gun on each one. And then I'll have 2 separate flashes that are off-camera flash in different corners of the room. There's advantages to this where you can fill in the shadows, so you can expose for the ambient light and fill in the shadows with flash. This makes editing a lot faster and easier. And also it can be used in daylight scenarios as well. So I had a wedding, and I used a lot of flashes actually for this wedding. The only problem with this scenario is that the ability to use high-speed sync, commanding that. Here we go. Here are the Rogue flashes. So I have lots of different colors here that I'll stick on my secondary flashes in the corners of the room for the ambient light. And what these gels do, which these ones, unfortunately, you can no longer get, they will adjust the temperature of your flash gun to match the ambient room, which is good if there's lights on in the room, iridescent lights or fluorescent lights. You can balance your own flashes, so you don't have to spend hours using gradient masks and radial filters to adjust the temperature of your pictures, and it makes your deliverable count go higher. So these are pretty cool. They attach like this, so you get like a little couple of rubber bands, stick them on your flash, just like that. Here we have a one-stop CTO gel. You can pop it in on one side and the other. There we go. And that way we can start balancing our flashes. So I always gel my lights because, like I said, it makes editing a lot easier. Like a lot. And they come in this pouch. However, these are also no longer available. But they do come. It used to come, if you can still find them used, it has like a little card here that helps you tell you which CTO to use when. I always start with a half CTO. So this is an option. So I'll stick those Rogue flash gels that come in this little pouch in my camera bag, and I can easily change my color temperature of my speedlights, my background speedlights. So that's a good option if you can still find them. I can't still find them up where I am. Even on Amazon you can't get them. So I believe that the company is just slowly selling off whatever they have at this point, unless they suddenly release them, re-release or start manufacturing again. I'm not sure what's going on with that company, but back in the day, even like I had to buy a new pack of these just a couple of years ago, and I mean, they're still serving me fine. And back then the company seemed like it was in good stead. Or what? I mean, what do I know? Might not have been, they could have just been selling off the stock then, but they're no longer be able to get them, which is a shame because they were a lot cheaper than the next option. And the next option I do generally really love. However, they are on the more pricey side. So, and I don't have the box anymore, but I'm now talking about MagMod. MagMod have been pretty cool. I have a few of their accessories now. Well, a few. I have two of the same because, like I said, if you have two, you have one. Two, one, yes. So, comes like this in the box, not quite like this, but this is how I store it. This, I haven't taken to a wedding yet, but I might take it to the next one. So, this is cool. You stick it on top of your flash, and you can direct the light outwards, like that. Or like, might be able to use this side. Maybe it seems, I don't know, more probably used like this. Like I said, I haven't experimented with this one yet, but I might take it to my next wedding, just for some fun. Anyways, so this is one of my primary flashes that live on my camera. As you can see, it comes with this like rubber elastic to stick on here. This is the MagMod 2 is compatible with round head and Fresnel head flashes. I am a fan of the Fresnel head just because, I don't know, I've always liked them. The round heads have been getting some good reputation behind them, but I don't know. You can still, the zoom range on a Fresnel head is longer, so this one can zoom, like narrow your flash band to 200mm focal length, which is handy for events where the Fresnel head, the round head, has a focus beam pattern of up to 105 or 100mm. So there is a difference of that, and that's just changing the zoom, like you can do how wide that flash pattern is going to be, so you can actually focus in that beam. Like when you have a flashlight with a twisty head on the end, and you can turn it, and you can change how wide the flash beam is to how narrow the flash beam is. So it has this rubber thing here that you stick on your flash. I can tell you what, this is a real wrestle to get on your flash. It doesn't come off. I'm not worried about that. So once it's on, it's not coming off quickly or easily. What comes in the cool little bag that they send you with. Now when you buy individual accessories, it doesn't come with this bag, but with the kit it does. It's like $2.50 Canadian, which is on the pricey side. I bought two at once. So it comes with this dome, and I was very skeptical. I held off this for a very long time using bounce flash. I used to avoid bringing out the Rogue. It now lives in my bag as a backup in case I lose one of these, but I actually avoid bringing out my Rogue, but just because of the size and how cumbersome it is. And I don't want to look like, I don't know, not that I don't want to look like a weirdo, but I don't know, it's just, it gives off a vibe that's, that I don't know, I'm not just, it looks a bit odd when you're using it. That's all, you get a bit, anyways. These are much more discreet. And like I said, I held off this for a very long time. And I was working with other photographers that used them, and I don't know, I was like, oh, how do you find those? And they're like, yeah, I love them. I'm like, not that I saw their pictures, but I do find the material, the way the material is, it does attract dirt, which if you keep it, you have to keep it in the bag if you don't want dirt flying around your camera bag. So it does attract dirt. And then that kit also comes with a grid, which is floppy, a focusing grid here. So instead of the light being spread out, you can also narrow it with your flash zoom and with a grid as well. So for like dance floors, I've yet to use this, but yeah, I might use this. I probably will. Maybe my next wedding. So my next wedding is all inside, so I've got to do some creative stuff with some lighting, and I want to push the boat out and, be more experimental instead of living all in my safety zone. So we have this. It comes with a grid, and then it comes with some gel. So you get a CTB, you get a half CTO, which is my favorite. That's quite my common go-to flash gel, is my half CTO. And then we have quarter, comes with a full CCO, a green for, it says plus green, a half plus green. So I can't remember off the top of my head for this one. Probably fluorescent, the tube lighting. Anyways, don't use this one. And then we have a 8 times neutral density filter to reduce your power of your flash. And it's kind of like gray. I don't use this one. Anyways, so I quite often use this on my flashes. Now, these are pretty cool. They're magnetic. So instead of having to fight with the elastic band, like I was doing with the Rogue Flash Bender gels, you just snap it on. Now, the build quality does seem pretty good, especially for the price. However, I am a bit wary of these magnets. Don't lose the magnets. So the magnets are, I believe they're glued into these gels. However, when I first got one out of the bag, I got these like a few days before a wedding. I didn't have time to return them. So I was like, okay, let's go for this. Let's go into the MagMod system and see how good it is. So I bought enough for 2 flashes. And if I liked it, I'll get them for the other 2 flashes that I use, which I'm now probably going to do before my next wedding. And so I just dropped it like that onto my flash and I pulled it back off and I'm like, oh, that's weird. The magnet had come out of this flash gel. I can't remember which one it was. I didn't have time to return it. I had it shipped in. So I super glued it back in, put the plastic cover back on, super glued that in. It hasn't come out since. But still, that's a little bit of a worry, especially when you work quickly. That would be not very cool on a wedding day. However, there is enough magnetic power in one magnet to keep it on your flash, as well as the magnet for your soft dome. And this, what I find is that I'll have it up on my camera like this or like this. You know, when I'm in portrait mode, I generally turn my flash like this. However, it is a heavy system to add to the end of your flash. So I find that sometimes, especially when I've been working quite a few hours, that the flash head, it likes to sink down. Especially when you're walking around and moving. And then when you squat down to get something out your camera bag, this touches the floor and picks up a bunch of dirt. And I have knocked them off a couple of times as well. But at least they're nice and bright and you can see them in the dark. And I'll use these up until like the first dance. And that's usually like the first dance is usually when I take off if the room goes completely dark. So when the room's dark, I take off my CTO gels because you no longer need your gels to compensate for the ambient light. And then I just go straight on the camera like this. And then I use my secondary flashes to point directly at my couples to create some backlight. Because I now don't want to fill the whole room with light to lift up the shadows. My primary focus is on the wedding couple, because that's what everyone there is for and that's what they want in their pictures. I like it because it's nice and soft. I don't have to worry about if it like comes off, it breaks. So I do like that about this MagMod system. I think it's pretty darn nifty. Nifty? That's a horrible word. So they do sell more colors that I'm looking to get into, so to add some drama to some images for my secondary lights. So they have like different flash gels available, like artist ones that aren't included in the main pack. If you're not using a camera for a specific part of the day, not a camera like a flash mounted on your top of your camera for a specific portion of the day, so if you're going completely off camera, you will want a flash trigger to control your flashes. Now, as you can see, I use the Godox Speedlights. They're not weather sealed, is what it is. The cameras are weather sealed, and this is another reason why I picked up the V863s. As you can see, it's the C model for Canon, because these ones are $250-ish to replace. Where if you get into the round head ones, they're much more expensive. Now, if I get caught in the rain and I'm using flash outside, this is $250 to replace. It's $1,000 for 4. Where if I'm using the round heads, it's a hell of a lot more money. Plus, if I knock it off something or I break the mount, even though it has a replaceable mount, and I can get the mount and replace it, it all takes time, right? If I have another wedding the following weekend, this is a lot quicker and easier, or cheaper, sorry. It's cheaper to replace and it does the same job. So for a business perspective, for cost effectiveness, this would be my recommended flash model of choice. So if you're taking all your speedlights off your camera and you're using completely off-camera flash, you're going to want a control trigger. So this is one of mine. I use these in my photo booth sessions and for when I'm using off-camera flash, like portraits. And you just mount it on top of your camera like that. This is the X Pro 2. I know they have newer ones out now, the X Pro 3 and the X3, like the smaller itty bitty mini ones. What I find with those is that they're rechargeable. Now that's all well said and good. However, over the long period of time, batteries degrade. These flashes have a replaceable battery. As far as I'm aware, the controllers are $100 and you can't take the battery out, the new ones like the X. I dropped my flash on the dog's butt. Hey buddy, it's all right mate. Anyways, so you have to recharge them. I also find that these flashes, the battery I can get, because I operate on a low power setting, like 1/4, 1/8. If I'm doing fill flash or like ceremonies using high-speed sync, I'll bump up the ISO and use fill flash at like 256. So these have replaceable batteries and they do last an incredibly long time. I think it's like 1,000 photos on full power. So if you half that power, that's 2,000 images. If you half it again down to 1/4, so that would be 4,000 pictures. So I operate on lower power settings and bump up my ISO to extend my battery life for as long as possible. High-speed sync does drain your battery power a lot faster. But if you're using just regular sync, 1/200th of a second, you're going to get a long period of time. And when I do use high-speed sync, would be for when people are walking quickly down the aisle. Most of the time, 1/200th is generally quite fine. So what I like about these older ones, going back to the flash triggers that you can stick on, there's a few variations available. I have these two, so when I'm doing like a portrait booth or off-camera flash, I'll have these on my cameras, and you can adjust these are what they called radio triggers. You can adjust the power output of your B flashes, so the flashes that are away from your camera. And you can adjust each flash for different powers. Now, by each flash, I'm talking about each group of flashes. So you have like A, B, C, D, and E. With these on the Canon system, if you're using these on top of your camera in the command mode, so as a trigger for your off-camera flashes as well as itself, Group A is always the one mounted on top of the camera. Unlike, I believe, the Nikon one, it has a separate one, like separate line item. So it has a different line item for each flash, A being this flash, and B being any other flashes, C. So you can set your off-camera flashes to different groups and you can adjust their power settings like that. You can do that with this or with these that mount on top of your camera. Now, so I used to use a combination of Yongnuo and Godox flashes at one point. So what I'd do is I'd have this on here, and then I'd have a Yongnuo flash on top of here, because it was not native, but I could still, it wasn't native to the Godox wireless system. And then I had, what did I have? I believe I had two of these, was it two of these? One of these, and two Godox flashes, I believe, or two of these and 2 Godox flashes. So what I'd do is I'd have a Godox flash on one camera, I'd have a Godox flash on a small light stand away from me, and on the other camera I would have this, which is the X2T controller, and one benefit of this controller is that you can mount a flash on top of it. So you can adjust group A, which would be the flash on top with power level, or you can do it on the flash. And then have group B. I usually set my group Bs either the same between the different master flashes that I'm using. And then I'd have another Yongnuo flash in the background. Now you could either set it up for a slave mode, or what I used to like to do is have one of these. This is the X1RC. This is a slave unit where you can adjust the power that it's telling the flash to operate at from your master Godox controller or your master Godox flash. And what this was cool as is it allows different brands to operate through your Godox master system. So the Godox flash or your master trigger, like this one. And you'd be able to adjust the power, not activate a high-speed sync, but you'll be able to adjust the power and then put your off-brand flash. I'm using a Godox for display purposes, but I was using Yongnuo at the time, and you can lock that on and have this on another light stand away from you. And that way you can manually adjust the power output of a non-Godox flash remotely. So, and these units were pretty cheap. So that's about it for flash triggers. Once you have all that equipment set up, what I like to mount my B flashes, or my slave, what it's more specifically called, are your slave flashes. They're the flashes that are off camera. I like to mount them on just cheapy light stands. This one's from Westcott. Now, I did try a newer light stand once, and I found that the top was just like very loosely riveted in. So if you go too cheap, that is not good. But these ones here, these Westcott stands, they were not very expensive, and they have lasted me, gosh, over 10 years. And I've used these in studio environments and mainly for work as well. And it's not going to break the bank if you accidentally leave it behind at a wedding, which you don't want to do. How I reduce that risk is I usually bring 3 items with me on a wedding day. That would be my camera satchel, my rolling case, and then I have like a long tripod bag from Manfrotto that is for tripods, but it does actually fit a couple of light stands in. So I have my 2 slave camera flashes, and I'll stick them in different corners of the room, one usually by near the head table or near the ceremony site, one near the back where the bridal party and the wedding couple are going to be walking down the aisle. So one off to the side there, and then I'll have one on top of my camera. And this is what I use. Now, to mount your flash to the top, I have one of these. This is, I'll put this down and out the way. This just mounts nice and on the top of that light stand there, and you just tighten it on. You can actually use stick an umbrella in here too. I don't bring umbrellas to weddings because people can poke their eyes out. So we don't want that. This is why I don't bring big light modifiers with me, because we don't want people to knock them over, damage them, or injure themselves. We want to reduce that risk. You don't want to have to claim on your insurance. And it has a clamp here that locks the foot of the flash in. Here we go. So we got the flash here, and we can just slot it in, and we will tighten up this thumb screw. Now, I did find that it did lock my Yongnuo flashes better. Now, saying that, I have had these for a very long time. And that will enable you to have your flash on top on a light stand. I set up a light stand and have a couple of these around the room. And then when it comes to the first stance, I actually move these where facing, so I actually pop these down like this. And I usually like to be where the DJ is when the first dance occurs. And just for the first dance, I have these flashes pointing towards me where the reception guests are. So these will be, you know, amongst the reception guests, somewhere where they're not going to trip over them, usually at the corners or close to the dance floor, pointing in towards the dance floor. And They are going to create a really nice effect over the wedding couple. So I'm backlighting the wedding couple as well as using the flash on top of my camera to fill in the wedding couple themselves, not with the direct, but with the MagMod with the soft diffuser on top. And then, like I said, I'll have these towards the wedding couple. And this is, I find, a very efficient way of creating some really stunning images. So what we covered today is some of the equipment that I like to bring along. We didn't cover any studio equipment and using it in a studio space or any studio lighting. However, I really like using Speedlights. They're not as powerful as studio lights, but they are very portable. Now you do have the Godox 200 Pros, which are pretty cool. I'm interested in those. But having 4 speed lights, if I break one off a main camera, I can take one of my slave flashes off and then stick it on a main camera body. So there's that option of why I like to use speed lights, because if you have 2, it means you have 1. So bringing 4 speed lights, I could potentially only, I still have at least 2 that I could still use throughout the day and get away with. Using this equipment, it helps provide, obviously income, because this is what I do. And it gives you an insight into what equipment you need to look into. Starting out, you can look into some of the more budget options that I highlighted, being creative with items from the dollar store, it definitely gets you in the right track. You can also pick up those Rogue gels. Now, the gels by Rogue doesn't seem that they're available. However, there are other options to buy off Amazon, cheaper ones. Would I recommend them? I don't know, because I haven't tested them. Are they color accurate? Again, I don't know, but you could always experiment. Apart from the small issue with the magnets from the MagMod system, I know they're very pricey. If you're just testing the waters, maybe don't jump into those yet. However, if you're seriously considering this, the MagMod system is something that I would 100% recommend. In future videos, we're going to be looking into how I use the flash system and how to use it and implement it into your workflow. I really hope that you guys have enjoyed watching this introduction into the equipment that you need for using flash systems at events. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to hear your feedback, and I'd love to see you guys here in the future. Have a good one, guys.